Today I'm going to show you how you can turn your scrap car's engine into this awesome looking glass top coffee table. Now this table can be used pretty much anywhere in the office as a coffee table or at home as a TV stand. And I'm going to show you what I did to make it, starting with disassembly. Now this is a 3-liter 1MZ FE V6 engine I got out of my Lexus ES300. You can see I've dropped it down with the subframe and the transmission. So the first thing I got to do is remove all the wiring and the transmission and get this engine onto a stand. What a mess. So a couple hours later I've got the engine turned over. Just got to separate that transmission. Got the subframe apart here. So here we've got the engine on its stand. Now I chose this engine because it is a V6 engine. It's going to make a really nice table. I'm going to start stripping on this engine, removing any of the components that we don't need, and for a good cleaning. Now that's pretty much it. I've got the engine stripped down to its block. I'm going to be keeping also the timing components as well as the two heads, the camshafts and the pistons, and the rest of these parts here are basically supporting parts that we don't really need. So here I've got all the major engine parts laid out here and it's ready for cleaning. And because I'm going to need to move around this engine stand, I'm going to try to make it as light as possible. So that includes small things like stripping off any gasket materials that we don't need, and also removing the bearings that we don't need and just going to add weight. Now another thing I'm going to do is remove the valve buckets from all of these valves and remove the valves and the valve spring itself so that it can make the engine a little bit lighter, and then I'll replace these after the head is painted. And I'm just going to use a spark plug socket here to remove the valve. Then I can remove this valve spring. Now when I turn over the head, I can just remove each of these valves here. I'm just pulling them straight up. The exhaust valve is non-magnetic. I'm also going to remove these spark plugs and just remove that spark plug. Now I'm going to further disassemble this head so I can drain all of the oil out of it. Pry this guy off. Don't need the gaskets anymore. I'm going to remove the oil control valve for now. I'm going to use a little bit of carb cleaner to clean the inside of the head. Coming with my wife's old toothbrush here and scrub up some of that carbon deposits and tarnish. So after about 2 hours of breathing in carb cleaner and a really tired toothbrush, I got most of the spots of built up carbon and oil off of the engine. Now with the air intake, I've removed everything including the fuel rails, the lines, and the injectors so we can clean this up. I've kind of mocked up the engine here so I can have a feel for how things are going to be set up. Now the idea is to have the pistons being the one holding the glass table top. So I'm going to have 3 of them situated on the head. I can either bolt them to the valve cover bolts over here or the cam cap bearings here. But if I do that, I might have to get a long bolt to go right through there and possibly knock out the spark plug too. And there it's nice and flat. So I started to bolt these pistons up to the head here at the valve cover bolts, and I noticed that this one is sitting outside of this one, and this one here actually interferes with the camshaft itself and doesn't go around it. So I'm going to have to figure out another way to bolt these up. And I found a configuration that might work. If I remove the cam bearing, I can just put the piston directly where that should be, and I'll be doing that 3 going down this way. The only thing is I'm going to have to remove or cut off the spark plug tube because this is going to crash into it over there. Now with everything pretty much mocked up, I'm next going to start degreasing everything. I've got engine shampoo over here. Of course, got my brother's trusty old toothbrush and my wife's old t-shirt here that I'm going to use to clean all this up. I'm going to start with the bigger pieces like the engine block. Just going to spray this stuff on. And just coming with my brother's old toothbrush here and scrub any hardly deposited areas here. And once I'm done scrubbing everything, I'm going to let this sit so the degreaser can soak into the dirt. Next up, I'll work on the engine head. And here I'm going to scrub the upper oil pan. Now I'm going to thoroughly rinse all the degreaser off of all of these engine parts. And now that I've put the large pieces to drain, I'm going to work on the smaller pieces. And my brother's toothbrush is actually wearing down, so I had to go in and steal another one. He's going to be really mad today. Now while these components are still wet, I'm going to give it a quick dry with my wife's old shirt here. That'll make sure that the water doesn't sit on it, causing rust, especially the steel component. And I've got all the parts cleaned here. I'm just going to let them sit and dry. Now that all the parts are clean, I'm just going to use a wire wheel here and any surfaces that have some extra crud on it that didn't come off in the cleaning. Now in order for me to mount this piston over here, I'm going to have to chop off this spark plug too. I'm going to see how much I can clean up this piston with this wire wheel. The wire wheel is definitely a little bit more powerful than my brother's toothbrush. So I've got all 6 of my pistons mounted to the head here, and you can see that the table's starting to take shape. The glass is going to sit across these pistons here, and it should be supported pretty strong because this is pretty firm. As for everything else, I'm just going to start putting all these components together just to get a mock-up of how everything looks like, and so I can determine what color scheme I'm going with. So here I've got the engine all set up here with the timing components and everything installed. I've got my water inlet here, which is optional because it might be a little too high for these pistons. In terms of the timing components, the only thing is the crankshaft. I'm going to have to JB weld this to the oil pump because I'm not including the crankshaft. It's just going to be too heavy. Now at the back of the engine, I'm going to bolt in my rear main seal, but another option I could do is to put my flywheel in here and paint it a nice contrasting color to give the back of the engine a finished look. And without these wire wheels, this job would be a lot harder. So now that I got everything together and I see how it works, I can disassemble everything, clean it, and paint it. Pretty cool. If I leave the cams loose, the timing belt actually spins all the pulleys. The good thing about my setup is everything's pretty loose and easy to take apart so that this engine can be moved very easily. Here I've got all the parts ready to be prepped before painting. Just going to give these heads a quick blow. I'm just going to use brake cleaner to spray everything down. This thing to use is a lint-free cloth like my brother's old dress shirt. The type of paint I'm using is this Rustoleum metallic paint. We're going to concentrate on the sides because that's what you're going to see. You're not going to see the bottom or the top part once the head and the bottom end is installed. Now we're going to give it one quick light coat all over, then let that dry, and then come back and give it a second coat. I'm going to be spraying inside of here with bronze, so I'm just going to spray everything else in chrome. And I don't need to fill in this area because it's going to be sprayed with bronze later. Now to get a two-tone on the piston head, I'm going to spray the head silver first, and then I'm going to come in later and spray the connecting rod bronze. Now for just the small pieces like the cam bearings, I'm just going to put them on this box here and spray them down. Now on my cams and gears, I'm going to be using this bronze color. It's got a metallic flake into it. And for the camshaft, I've taped off all of the lobes that I don't want to get paint on. So now that the first coat is dry, I'm just going to give it a final light coat. I'm also going to give the block a second coat. So now that the silver here is dry, I'm going to paint the inside here in bronze, so it looks like all of this is more of a natural color. So I just have to start by masking off all of this area here that I don't want to get sprayed bronze. So now I'm going to spray everything here bronze. I'm going to be careful not to get any overspray on the outside. And I'm going to try to spray on the inside here so we end up with a neat line of bronze on the inside and a silver face where the valve cover should be. Now I'm going to paint the connecting rods bronze. And I don't really need to use any masking for this if I'm careful how I spray. I've got the water pump pulley masked off. Now I'm going to pull off the masking tape. So you can see that the edge of the tape is left. You have silver on top here and you have bronze underneath here. I think it looks pretty cool to be contrasting like that. And I'll just peel off this masking tape from the cam lobe. I'm just going to unmask this water pump here so we can see what the contrast looks like. That looks pretty sweet. Here's what we got going on. I got black over there. We got bronze over there. We got silver and bronze over here and over here. And we've got the chrome only over here. So the timing cover is black on the back side and silver on the front side. So it's going to match with the engine when you're looking at it head on, but contrast with it if you see it from behind. And that's pretty much it for today. I'm going to let all of this paint cure before I assemble the engine back together. You can see that the components are looking really shiny and promising for this project. Well, I've let the parts dry overnight and everything is looking really nice and shiny. I just can't wait to get this engine back together. Now on the bottom of the base, I added 2 bolts here so that I can level it against the transmission bell housing. I'm going to begin assembly by putting the block onto its base here. I'm going to reinstall the head. Now I'm going to install this coolant channel cover here and install the air intake. I'm going to install that cam bucket and the cam lobe. I'm going to install the water pump. Next I'm going to install the camshaft. Now I'm going to install the fuel rail. Now I'm going to mount the piston, cam bearing area here. Secure that with a screwdriver. And now I'm going to install the bearing caps. I'm going to install the water inlet. Now I'm going to install the tensioner pulley. Now I'm going to install the timing belt tensioner. Now the timing belt cover is an option. You can install it or you can keep it exposed just like this. I tend to like it like this, but my wife actually prefers the timing belt cover, so we're going to install that. So now I'm going to install the timing belt cover. Now we're going to install the gears. Next up, I'm going to put on the timing belt. Don't worry, the timing doesn't have to be too accurate. Now, the timing belt actually hugs this crank here so good, I probably don't even have to glue it. Now the wife was nice enough to paint these cam bolts for me, so I'm just going to take them. Now for the flex plate, I just put 2 bolts straight into the rear main seal into the block. And for one of the final touches, we're going to modify this just so that it can fit our shortened oil pan. Break. Yep. And then I can insert that dipstick into there. Done. And that's pretty much it for this table. The only thing I have to do is go pick up the glass to go on top of the pistons. I really like how the chrome paint worked on the aluminum to give it a really bright shine with the bronze contrasting, especially for things like the radiator cap and the fuel rails. Coming around the side here, we've also got a oil dipstick so I can check my oil. I've highlighted the little 1MZ there so we can tell which engine this is. Coming around the back here, we have the flex plate, which I've also painted in bronze, and I've also put in my thermostat at the back here. And then coming back around to the front here, we have all the timing components painted in bronze. I think it gives it a really nice, subtle contrasting color. The finishing piece is this piece of glass. I'm just going to lay it on top of the pistons and center it. I could use some double-sided tape when I do put this in its final spot, just so that the glass doesn't shift around with whatever's on top of it. And that's pretty much the engine table all finished up with the glass on top. I think it came out looking really awesome. I'd probably put a small TV on here or use it as a centerpiece for a coffee table. Now I did have to remove this piece here because it sits a little bit high for the glass, and in order for the glass to be centered over the piston, I had to remove it. Although I could move the glass over and put it in, but it does look a little bit asymmetrical overall with the engine's V-shaped design. So if you like this build, make sure you follow me on Instagram to find out what the next build is going to be, and subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one.